Alright, so this is my latest little project. This is the DiscoveryF4 board from STM. Well, ST, I guess. I can't keep these things straight. But this is the board. They sell for 15 bucks, pretty cheap, but there's a lot of good stuff on here. And anybody who likes to hack with this stuff could have a lot of fun with this board. But I'm not going to use 98% of what's on there. I'm just using it to test out the Tau Labs code so I can fly it on this quad to see what I think of it and see if I want to buy a nice board and put that on one of my good quads. So this is a bit of an experiment. I just got this working, so I wanted to share it and show it off. And you can see I'm getting a warning here because I'm using a different version of the ground control system and firmware because I haven't installed the tools to compile ground control for Windows, so I'm just using what's available instead of the nightlies, which I should be because I'm building my code in a virtual machine under Linux. And you know, the problem is because of how this all works, it's really kind of a pain to get the USB into the virtual machine to flash the board. Now that it's up and running, I should be able to run the ground control in Linux, but we'll get to that in a minute or two. For now, I just want to show off that it works. It didn't at first. I was getting 4 blinks, which indicated an error with the baro sensor, which seemed odd to me because I don't have a baro sensor, which kind of clued me in that the problem was I don't have one. Why that was odd is because all the instructions on how to build this only list the MPU 6050, this guy here, which is the accelerometer and gyrometer, and it didn't mention any other sensors. So I assumed I didn't need any others to get it up and running, and I'd be able to add them later. Now, turns out the FlyingF4 config expects the gyro accelerometer chip. It also expects a magnetometer chip, and it expects a baro chip. So I had to go in there and figure out what exactly had to be done to disable that, and it turned out it was actually really simple. Once I started to get my head around how their code is laid out, I just had to go into the flight targets FlyingF4 firmware piosconfig.h, and in here I found right here is where it says which sensors to include. So I added the 2 slashes to comment out the HMC 5883, which is the magnetometer. These 3 here were already blocked out. And I also disabled the MS 5611, which is the baro sensor. So once I did that, I recompiled. It took me a whopping 5 minutes, 9 seconds. And emailed, because I don't even have networking set up working right. Well, I have networking since I can send email, but I don't have shared folders or anything between the virtual machine and my main machine. So I emailed the new firmware files to myself, flashed them with the ST Tools ST-Link utility to flash the new bootloader. And then once the bootloader was flashed, I loaded this up and was able to use the firmware page in GCS to flash the actual firmware. And once that was done, by golly, we have things starting to come up. Now it's nowhere near flyable yet. You can see nothing is showing green, so nothing is really set up yet. And you know, all I have is, well, this is the minimal sensors needed. I haven't wired up the other chip, the flash memory chip, which is actually listed as one that is required, but oddly enough is not actually included in the configs by default. So the documentation's pretty out of date on this. I mean, it was just edited fairly recently, but this code's changing quick, and the documentation is not keeping up very well. So if you mess with this stuff at the level I am, where you're compiling it yourself, you're going to have to figure a lot of it out. You're not going to just be able to follow the instructions. But somewhere in here should be one of these includes to enable that flash chip. I'll have to take a look at that later and figure that out. I'm also going to look to see if there's a way to use the BMP085 as a baro sensor instead, because that's what I have on here currently. And I'd like to keep the sensors that are on here, which is the, I actually have in there the same MPU 6050 that I have right here, but I also have an HMC 5883 in there, and I have a BMP085 in there. So I'd like to get the BMP085 working, because if I get all three of those going, and I attach the GPS, this board should be able to fly with full control of everything. And should be able to position, hold, return to home, the works. So I'm pretty excited about this, and I'm hoping by this weekend I'll have this enough that I can fly it. But for now I just had to show off that I have it working enough that I can connect to the ground control, and sure enough, if I tilt right, we go right. If I tilt left, we go left. If I tilt forward, we go down. If I tilt up, we go up. I'm not entirely sure. Oh, I see. I'm looking at the 3D model to see what's going on here. Green is the front on that, apparently. You can see there it goes right and left. And of course the horizon goes the opposite direction, because that's actually how it works. So a lot of people think that's a mistake. It isn't. But there, it's working. The sensors are reading, it's connecting, and progress is being made, so I'm happy.